My name is Larry Stewart, and I live in Forsyth, Georgia. I actually served at Fort McClellan, Alabama, which is now a closed Army military base. From there, I served in the Army Reserves for 21 years, the Military Police Corps, and from there, I served as the state director for the U.S. Selective Service System for the state of Georgia for another 10 years.
Oh, awesome. So you were at Fort McClellan. That's interesting. That I'm actually working on a documentary about that. Can you talk a little bit about your experience at Fort McClellan?
Well, living in Georgia, Fort McClellan was relatively close, and it was really, really exciting to know that I wouldn't have to go, across country to military officers' basic course, military police officers' basic course. So I thought it was a great opportunity to go to Fort McClellan, within driving distance of our home. I found it to be a really, what I thought to be a really, really good place to be. It was not the old barracks that I had experienced at uh, Fort Bragg, North Carolina. It was relatively close to a city, Birmingham, Alabama, and Anniston, Alabama. So it was good for a young person to be there. I had recently graduated from college in ROTC and looking at jobs and so forth. And Fort McClellan was the ideal place to be for a young unmarried guy at that time.
What were some of the things that you did while there?
Well, Anniston, Alabama is not a large city, so people went to Birmingham for the traditional nightlife and so forth. Um, On post was a training post, so it didn't have all of the luxuries that some of the more advanced military installations had. We had a chance to go to the officers club and sometimes to a movie and so forth. The real excitement came when we got a chance to go to Birmingham and kind of hung out like young guys will do, at that time. It was back in 1979, so I didn't have all the gray hair then as I have now. So,
The gray hair looks great. The gray hair looks great. So after your time in service, you then applied to VA benefits, correct?
yes, yes.
And what was the problems that you were running into with your application for VA benefits?
Well, I may not have understood completely, but I'll try to address it. Well, after I finished the officer basic course at Fort McClellan, I went into civilian employment, and all was going well, serving my country, and things were going good. So about 20 years later, I found out that I had some of the genitourinary symptoms, and I started to get it checked out. And after seeing quite a few doctors and urologists and so forth, in tests, I found out that I had prostate cancer. So at that point, I didn't have a lot of options, quite frankly. I had not experienced any of the issues uh, between the time I was at McClellan and 20 years later. And everybody was, talking about, the issues at Fort McClellan, but, I had not experienced any at that point. So upon the confirmation of prostate cancer 20 years later, I was told that I was relatively young. Now I was about 40 years old, early 40s, and I had prostate cancer. So I didn't know exactly what to do. I did check with uh, people at uh, the VA center near me at the time, and they basically asked the questions: "Were you in Vietnam?" I said no. They asked if I was in one of the other places, I assume were the presumptive sites for people with prostate cancer in connection with Agent Orange. And I told them I was at Fort McClellan, and a very nice veteran service officer said, "Well, if you had at Fort McClellan, it's almost like being in Vietnam. In fact, you might have had a better chance in Vietnam of not getting it as than being at Fort McClellan, because it's a very hot spot there with a bunch of toxins and so forth. So, but then it became clear that it was a long shot at best about the prostate cancer for it being officially addressed, even though it was officially diagnosed and had the treatment and so forth. And so I went about my business until the PACT Act was passed here, what, 2.5 years ago. Between the PACT Act, well, between uh, 2000, the year 2000, and the passage of the PACT Act was another 22 years that basically I had to kind of suffer in silence. All of the traditional residuals from treatment with prostate cancer came my way in large quantities, if you will. And I had to try to manage that and work and do all the other things that people do. And then, upon the passage of the PACT Act, I, well, in the meantime, I still heard stories about Fort McClellan and the civilian litigation that was going on with the um, uh, local people being victimized by uh, the Monsanto plant that produced a lot of toxins there, and it made me think about my time at Fort McClellan in terms of experience that I had there, with the training and so forth. But again, that had been a long time ago. But again, in talking to experts and people in the urology field, they told me that just in general that I might have picked up something there when I was training there, and the type of prostate cancer I had, a very aggressive cancer at a very young age, that more likely than not at that time, it came from being exposed to it in my military career. And so I really got busy at that point looking, around and talking to other folks who had been there, and found out that many of them had very similar stories as mine. And so after the passage of the PACT Act, I decided I needed to get my story before someone who could possibly give me some legitimate information about the relationship between chemicals and toxins that have been stored at Fort McClellan. Because in addition to being at McClellan for the officer basic training, uh, I was in a reserve unit that also did law enforcement duties at Fort McClellan. So, and Anderson Army Depot, and everybody, and both as a student and as now as a platoon leader, we trained and operated at Pelham Range, which is a military site just outside of Fort McClellan. Um, but back to the PACT Act, um, I, after talking to several people and several other folks who had um, been victimized by many of the same symptoms that I was victimized and the same kinds of diseases, I started to look further. And I found out from those general inquiries that I guess politically it was not an easy route to go and to down that road as far as Fort McClellan was concerned. That folks would throw roadblocks in every direction, and just getting information was unbelievable. And I even talked to some of the veteran service organizations and a couple of attorneys in the field, and nobody wanted to touch the Fort McClellan story, which leads me to my contact to Hill and Ponton, and that's is the place where I found unbelievable reception. I found history that I had, done some checking on, of people who had done a lot of work in research and openness about, what the research indicated about Fort McClellan, and so I made the decision. I wanted to submit my claim and submit my background and the information I had for an evaluation to see if I would be someone that they would be willing to take on as a client. So uh, I was really shocked and pleased and excited and all the other terms I can think about to know that somebody was taking on my case and with a level of sincerity. Uh, it wasn't just when we got to Fort McClellan, things kind of went well. That's a long story. That's a complicated story, and you uh, all of the you were not there, you were not doing this, and and you were a reservist and so forth. I didn't find that, which I thought was very, very warm and professional of Gilman Ponton. Uh, I found someone, intake person, that was just unbelievable. I wish that I could tell you who that person was, but the person asked me to submit, uh, and maybe somebody knows that person, but I was able to submit my information, and and the person I talked to was warm and receptive and willing to talk about the legal issues involved, but not from the standpoint that we there's nothing that can be done, and and I found that exceptionally welcoming, and it allowed me to to feel that there was some hope as far as getting some relief, because in all candor, my prostate cancer at that point was really at maximum as far as the effects of the treatment. I had all of the major symptoms with incontinence, and and I'm not ashamed to say it. With the wearing of the clothing to try to keep myself um, dry. Um, I just had some difficult time sleeping. The frequency of urinations, all of those things were just coming really hard and heavy. So I was really hopeful, and that this firm could help me, and they did. After the initial evaluation and talking about what was involved, and hearing my case and being honest with me, I guess that's the other real thing I hold this firm so high in esteem for. They were honest with me. They didn't play down their ability and willingness to bring the matter to court. But they did tell me, that hey, it won't be a case like that being in Vietnam or being in one of the countries where it was obvious that the Agent Orange was in use, or the toxins were being in use. But they gave me a sense of hope. So we filed a claim, and I say we because I was excited that unlike some of the people out there, they make that decision for you and leave you out. Uh, this firm did not do that. Every decision that they made, they included me. I was in constant contact with them, right down to asking them questions about what certain things meant and processes, because I never dealt with the VA before, and I found it to be a huge bureaucracy that was not people friendly. So they really helped me in terms of understanding, you know, uh, what partnership meant. So the trust began at that point. So we filed a claim, and didn't get the results that I was hoping for initially. Denied, and at that point, I really thought in the back of my mind, "Oh well, uh, we really tried," but that wasn't the position of this law firm. The law firm said, "Yeah, but we have some good information. You were there. You have statements from other members of your family, your wife, and people who were there, like buddy statements and so forth. Um, you you truly, truly have suffered a long time, which at that point, about 40 years. I know that's a long time to suffer, but it was about 40 years. And they said that, uh, during the evaluation of your claim at the regional office, they acknowledged some things that, would be helpful in terms of going forward. They uh, did not grant the claim, but they, gave the legal minds there enough confidence that they, had enough that we could go forward to, and we were in the AMA, the new system approach for as, dealing with claims that, you know, uh, we could go. So we asked for a high level review, I believe it was, and that was denied too. So I remember a conversation where it was just put straightforward to me. It's like, well, we'll take this before the, uh, the VA appeals law judge, or the ALJ, is in my understanding of systems as a whole. And and I said, great, that sounds like a winner to me. Uh, but what I found out also was the power of the research that this firm had done. And, and I found, from the videos that were being shown, I followed those, which was a means of staying informed. But I kept hearing this guy named Kerry Baker, and talking with all of the other attorneys in the office. Shannon has been my case manager, and let me just say how wonderful she has been in terms of sharing with me, and not letting my expectations get out of hand, but being realistic with me, and communicating to me exactly where we were. But I was very impressed with the level of research, and I did hear about the obstacles in that as well. But the information that was on hand within this firm seemed to be much greater than anybody else's. So when I was told that we would go before the veterans law judge, that there was no, again, the firm was always honest with me. I really, really appreciate this, because sometimes, false hope is not as bad as, I mean, it's worse than not being told up front. And the firm kept me up front in information. But I was told that, that it was taking an unpredictable amount of time for the administrative law judges, the veterans appeals judges to get around to cases, and they handle them in alphabetical. I mean, not alphabetical, but in sequence, first come, first serve. And unless there was some really, really compelling reason with my health and so forth, that I would have to wait. And some of those things have taken 3 to 5 years, 2, 3, 5, 4, 5 years. And I thought, oh my Lord. But anyway, I did, and through the persistence and professionalism, and the just the services I received from Hill and Ponton, uh, on the 26th of February, I got a decision from the administrative. Uh, and I hope no one is offended when I say administrative law judge. It just come to me from a different set of bureaucracies that I'm familiar with. But anyway, the I received a email, a text message, I think, and I had forgotten I had registered with VA, and I thought it was some kind of a joke, quite frankly, but it was an acknowledgement that I had my case had been uh, decided by the judge, and I would hear officially through some correspondence. So I was on pins and needles for a few days until uh, just Shannon called me, as she has done, and keeping me updated on stuff, and told me that the decision had been to grant my claim, and that was just wonderful news.